Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is SUKKAH Daf Yud Gimel. We begin 5 lines from the top of the Amud. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Gidla Marav, Hai Apkusa de Dikla. Apkusa de Dikla, says Rashi, is Moitza HaDekel. Clusters of branches of reeds which grow out at the bottom, from the bottom of the palm tree. Misachachin behu. They can be used for schach. Although we learned yesterday that we try to avoid bundles, chavilos of kash, of eitzim, and zradim. We learned in the Mishnah Apostle for schach because of gzeras oitzer. You see, although this particular time the schach is kosher because he placed it on his sukkah to provide shade, l'shem tzel, but it may lead to a situation where he may actually sit under bundles which were not placed to provide shade. Rather, l'shem oitzer. What does that mean? It was common practice in those days to take bundles of branches, of fresh reeds, and lay it out to dry for oitzer. Rashi says oitzer means for storage. It would be stored for later use, as fuel, as animal feed. In which case, that bundle, that material sitting on your sukkah was not positioned there l'shem tzel. In which case it's aser, it's pasal min haTorah. So Chacham said, keep away from all types of bundles, even legitimate schach, which is going to be placed on your sukkah l'shem tzel. If it's in bundle form, you may not use it, because it may lead to a situation where that bundle was placed for the sake of yibush, for drying, for storing, in which case it's not kosher for sukkah. Still and all, says the Gemara, and as the Mefarshim explain, this concept of bundles is only when it's reminiscent, when it's similar to those bundles which would be laid out to dry. Then we're concerned, well, if you're going to use schach in that manner, you may actually go ahead and use bundles which are not placed up to l'shem schach. But if it doesn't really resemble those storage bundles, then there's no concern, such as in this case, with the apkusa de dikla, which is just a cluster of a naturally occurring cluster of branches and reeds. It's not really considered a bundle within the context of our discussion. Says the Gemara, afagav da'agidi, even though they're bundled together, they're clustered together, there's no concern. It wasn't actually tied together by somebody. Eged v'dei shemayim lo yishmei eged. A naturally occurring bundle or cluster is not considered a cluster. It's not considered an eged. That's not a bundle that we're speaking about. It doesn't really resemble bundles placed atop your sukkah for storage purposes. Says the Gemara, another chiddush. You see, on the bottom, they will cluster together. They come together as one, but on top, these branches, these reeds, would spread apart. So, afagav the hadar agidlu, although he comes back and he ties the top together. This time, he tied it manually. There's no concern because iged b'chad, tying together something which is really one and the same unit, because they're really attached on bottom. Lo yishmei eged, that's not considered an eged, it's not considered a bundle, which is only when you take separate entities, reeds, branches, and you tie them together as one. Omar Rav Chizda Maravina, another case. Bar Shila, Hani Dukri Dekani. These clusters of branches, of kanim, of reeds, of bamboos, a similar situation. So they come out as a cluster. Masachachin behu, you can use them for schach. Afagav da'agidi, although they're bundled together, in which case it would appear like a chavila. No, afagav da'agidi ninu, eged b'dei shemayim l'shmei eged. Since it's a natural cluster, that's okay. Afagav da'hadar agad luhu, even though he goes back and he ties the tops together, once again, iged b'chad, lo yishmei iged. Tying together something which is really one and the same entity, lo yishmei eged, that's not what we call an eged. It's not similar to the storage bundles. Tani nami hachi, we have a raya from a brisa to this effect. Kan medikronin mesachachin behen. You can use kanim, you can use the kronim, these stick, these branches, you can use them. Says the Gemara. Kanim, pshita. Of course you can use bamboos and reeds. Why not? Rather, says the Brisa, says the Gemara, the Brisa meant Emo kanam shelter kronim mesachin behen. You can use reeds which grow out in this manner, like dukronim. Rashi says a decker. It's like some sort of fork, some sort of pitchfork. So they come out pointed like a pitchfork. But since on the bottom they're considered one, they're clustered together. Although on the bottom they're clustered together, there's no concern because it's a natural cluster. V'amrav Chizda Amaravina Barshila. It's another halacha from the same Anda Amar. Hani mirirasa de'agma. What about using, this is for marar on Pesach, using marar, lettuce, which is called mirirasa de'agma. Chazeres shel agam, Rashi says, which grows in the swamp. So it's not plain marar, it has another name to it. Mirirasa de'agma. Adam yotzei b'hani dechavasa b'Pesach. It can be used on Pesach, although it's not just plain marar. It has another nickname to it. That's okay. Meisvei, says the Gemara. We have a kash on this. Ezav v'lo ezav yavan. The ezav grass meant to be used for the paraduma has to be pure ezav, the original brand. V'lo ezav yavan. It can't be the Greek ezav. V'lo ezav kuchli. It's another type. V'lo ezav midbari. V'lo ezav roimi. V'lo ezav sheyesh l'shem livoy. You can't use any ezav which has an additional title to it. You have to use the original brand. Apparently by marar as well, says the Gemara. If it's marar shel agam, that's not pure marar, it's another variety. Amar Abaye, there's a big difference. Kol shenishtanish shmoi koydem matan Torah. Whenever you have something which has been given that other name already before matan Torah, uba sa Torah v'yikpida alav. Then the Torah came and said, I want ezav. Apparently the Torah is being particular and saying, I want ezav pure, not ezav yivani, not ezav kuchli, which were around at that time. B'yadua, it's pretty clear that the Torah is being makpid on the pure ezav, as opposed to the other ones, sheyesh l'shem livui. So that explains the halacha by ezav. V'hani, as opposed to, in the case of the marar de'agma, lo nishtanu shmayu koydem matan Torah. They haven't gotten their name before matan Torah. In which case, when the Torah says marar, it was all inclusive. Even the marar de'agam, despite the fact that later on they added the title agam to it, that descriptive title, doesn't matter because at the time of matan Torah, it was called marar, and when the Torah said marar, it included that as well. And so as opposed to these which were not nishtana shemayu koydem matan Torah klal. That's one pshat. Rava Amar. Rava says a different teretz. Hani mirarisa stama shmayu. The truth is that the marar shel agam, the marar of the swamp, is really stam marar. In reality, it's not really a different variety. The Gemara figure that mararisa the agma is a different type. Says Rava, no, it's actually the same thing. V'ai dekari lahu mirarisa the agma. Its name doesn't reflect the fact that it's a different variety. It doesn't. It doesn't represent a different variety. Why then? Why then did they call it marisa the agma? V'ai dekari lahu marisa the agma, because of its location where it grows, mishum de mishtakach ba'agma, because it grows in the agam. So there's no reason why not to use it for marar. It's one and the same type, one and the same variety. Tosi says it seems that Abai is not really being chaylik on Rava, that if indeed it's the same type, there's no reason to disqualify it. Abai was simply presenting another formula. When we do exclude, when we don't exclude. But in this case, where it's really the same thing, there's no reason to exclude it, it's because it happens to be called marar da'agma. Getting back to bundles. Amar of Chizda. How many are in the bundle? For it to be considered a bundle, Rashi learns, a bundle regarding agudas ezav. So in order to sprinkle the paraduma, you have to have a bundle of grass. Rashi says, likewise regarding sukkah, what's considered a chavila, a bundle regarding SUKKAH. How many units are in the bundle? Amar of Chizda. Iged b'chad. You just take one unit and sort of tie it. Lo shmei agad. That's not called a bundle. It's tied in itself. Shalosh shmei agad. If you have 3 in a bundle, that's already considered a bundle. So 1 not, 3 yes. Shnayim. What if you have only 2 in the bundle? That's somewhere in between. Machlekes, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbanon. So it's machlekes with Tanoim, whether it's considered a bundle. This not. Mitzvahs Ezev. What is the ideal way to be Makai in the mitzvah of Ezev? Shloisha klachim. You have to take 3 separate plants. I should say 3 roots, meaning 3 independent plants of the Ezev grass. Ubehen. Shloisha gevoilim. For a total of 3 stalks, meaning each plant has 1 stalk of Ezev. So 3 together is considered your agudas Ezev. Rabbi Yossi Omer, mitzvahs Ezev shloisha gevoilim. The mitzvah is to have 3 to start off. Ushiyarav shnayim. But if 1 drops out in the middle, that's okay. Shirayim of 2 is enough, as long as you start with 3. V'gardum of kolshu. This is even a greater chiddush. Even when they're rubbed out and worn out, as long as you have some Ezev remaining behind, so you have 3 little tips, that's okay. So the Tanakama speaks about 3. Rabbi Yossi speaks about a mitzvah to have 3, but shirayim, 2 is enough. Kasalka daitin. Now, who presented this Mishnah? It was Rav Chisda. That when it comes to 2 in a bundle, we have machlekes Rabbi Yosef Rabban. Now, who says what? Kasalka daitin. The Gemara figured that Rav Chisda had this in mind. Midish shiyar of shnayim. The fact that Rabbi Yossi allows shirayim to be 2. Apparently 2 is enough for a bundle. You could even start off with 2. That's the Gemara's assumption. When Rabbi Yossi speaks about 3, that's because that's the ideal way of doing it. 3, that's a real bundle, but you can get away with 2, whether you're starting with 2 or ending with 2. The fact that Rabbi Yossi says 3 is only a mitzvah, otherwise what's the machlekes? There's a machlekes here, right? If Rabbi Yossi says you really only need 2, 2 is ma'akev and 3 is a mitzvah, apparently the Rabbanan who disagree, they're arguing about something, apparently they hold 3 is not just lichatchila, not just a mitzvah, it is ma'akev, it is required. And that's apparently what Rav Chisda had in mind when he said 2 in a bundle is contingent upon Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanan. So according to Rabbi Yossi, it's okay. According to Rabbanan, it's not. Says the Gemara, V'atanya, that can't be. Take a look at the next price. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Ezev tchila shnayim, u'shiyarav echad pasel. If you begin with a Ezev that only has 2, and then 1 gets dropped out, it's pasel. Ve'enoi kosher at shehet chilas shloisha shiyar shnayim. The only way it's kosher is if you begin with 3 in that bundle. So then even if 1 drops out in the middle, once you started with 3, 2 is considered enough, a shirayim of 3, and you're okay. It's pretty clear that Rabbi Yossi requires 3. It's me'akev b'di'evet. So how can you say that Rabbi Yossi allows just 2? Says the Gemara, Eifach. Let's switch around the names. The Rabbi Yossi shleisha la'akev. According to Rabbi Yossi, 3 is absolutely necessary to make an agudas ezev. The Rabbanan shleisha la'mitzvah. According to them, only 2 is really absolutely necessary. 3 is only the ideal, the optimum. It's the mitzvah. So the bottom line is like this. Rav Chisda tells us, an aguda of 3 is certainly okay. 1 is not. 2, according to Rabbanan, is okay. According to Rabbi Yossi, unless it's 3, it's not considered an aguda. So that's regarding the initial bundle. What about shirayim? If 1 falls out after it's bundled, so then we drop down 1. According to Rabbi Yossi, you start with 3, you can end off with 2. According to the Rabbanan, although you need to start with 2, but even if 1 happens to fall out, the shirayim of echad is fine. Asks Tosfos, here we see that 3 is considered an aguda, whereas in Maseches Avos, Mishnah tells us you need 5 for an aguda. Mishnah speaking about somebody sitting and learning with 10 people, with 5 people around him. That's also considered, that also deserves the shchina, because it says, V'aguda soy al eretz yisoda, an aguda is 5. Here we learn, even 3 is an aguda. Says Taisus, there is different. Because we're speaking about Hashem creating the world, and Hashem's hand created the world. Ubiyad yesh bo chamesh etzbois, a hand has 5 fingers. So, in that context, aguda means 5, whereas, generally speaking, whether it's by Ezoiv, whether, by Rashi learns, by the chavilos, the bundles of SUKKAH, 3 is already considered, 3 is a crowd. Therefore, that's considered an aguda. Interesting, Taisus brings, this is back on Daf Yud Beis, a Yerushalmi that learns that the chavila by SUKKAH is only concerned if it has at least 25 kanim in it. So it needs to be a bundle of 25. In fact, in Shulchan Aruch, he paskins like that, Yerushalmi. There's no concern of chavila SUKKAH unless it has at least 25 units within it. And the svar is because Gzeres Eitzer is only something which resembles a bundle, which would be commonly laid out to dry into stores, so that's only if it's a significantly sized bundle, but otherwise there's no concern. Continues the Gemara. Vatanya, in fact, will bring a raya from a brisa that our approach is correct. Which approach? That the Rabbanan actually hold that you only need to start with 2, and then if one drops out, the shirayim of 1 is enough. Because the brisa says, Ezoiv shchet chilasei shnayim u'shiyarav echad kasher. If an Ezoiv starts out with 2 in the bundle, and ends up only with 1, that's fine. Ve'ne pasal at sheheit chilasei v'shiyarav echad. Only times it's pasal is if it begins or ends with 1. 1 second, says the Gemara. Shiyarav echad pasal? Do you mean to say if you ended up only with 1, it's pasal? Ha'amris shiyarav echad kasher. You just told me otherwise. If you end with 1, that's okay. El ema, rather, the brisa means ashetei tchilasa kishiyarav echad. Only time it's a concern is if the tchila, the initiation of this bundle, is with only 1 unit, which is actually the same number that is allowed by shirayim. Then it's no good, because you have to start with something significant. Shirayim, that's a remnant of the original, but you have to start off on the right foot. So the only time it's possible is if tchilasai, if the initiation is with the number 1, kishiyorav, like the allowable number by the shirayim, which is echad. In any case, we prove from here that the Rabbanan hold that you only need to start with 2 and end up with 1. So that's a raya that when the Rabbanan is speaking about 3, it's only the mitzvah, but li'akev it's only 2 as a starting point. And as far as shirayim, you go down to 1. Whereas Rabbi Yossi holds, you have to start off with 3, and you can end off with 2. Darash Merema, Hani Isuraisa de Surah. What about these bundles of kanim, of reeds, which were bundled together simply for convenience, for count? It's like a bundle of 25 kanim, which would allow the customer just to pick it up and leave instead of having to count them individually. So the point of binding these kanim together was not for the sake of storing them as such, drying them as such. It was just for a customer convenience. In which case Rashi says they would take it home and untie it. When they would have to lay it out to dry, perhaps it was very moist, and that was a derech there, to untie it when they got home. It wasn't tied together for the long term. Hani Isuraisa, these bundles which were sold in Surah, this Surah, Mesachen bu, they can be used for SUKKAH, afagav da'agdan, even though they're tied together. Just tied together for their account, like a dozen roses. Bring it home, you take it apart. It's not meant to stay that way. Therefore, there's no gzeras oitza. Amar Baba, hani tzrifa de urbani. What about these shacks, these hunters' shacks made with urbani, araves? So there are these domed shacks made of araves, and the way it worked is that on top, the tips were tied together, that would keep it in place. And on the bottom as well, the bottom of this round, dome-shaped shack, all the way around the perimeter on bottom, there was some sort of light weave which would actually keep it in place as well. So the main fastener was on top. Then on the bottom, along the perimeter, there would be some braiding together as well. Says the Rabbah, Hani tzrifa de urbani. These urbani shacks, these shacks made of arabais, kiva shehutra. Rashe madanim shalahen. Once the rashe madanim, referring to the knots on top, were untied, so it was unraveled on top, ksher, now they can be used for SUKKAH. It's no longer considered a bundle. V'agidim itatoy, says the Gemara. What do you mean? It's still bound together on bottom. Why isn't it considered a bundle? Amar Papa de Sharilu, we're speaking that he untied the bottom as well. Rafuna v'Vishu Amar afilu teima lo Sharilu. You know what? Even if he didn't untie the bottom, there's no concern. Kol eged she'einu asur l'tataloi. Any bundle which cannot be transported in that manner, because in this case, once you start moving it around, it just falls apart and collapses. It's not really firmly tied on the bottom; it's just slightly braided. Lo yishmei eged. That's not called a true eged. And again, the point is, it doesn't compare to the bundles which were placed on the rooftops for drying, for storing, in which case there's no concern of gzeira asayitz. So, conclusion, we spoke about ein mesachichem b'chavilos because it might lead to a case where he'll use bundles which were placed atop his sukkah for other purposes of drying and storing. What's considered a chavila, an eged, a bundle, which has this concern? Only if it was bundled b'dei adam manually, as opposed to a naturally occurring bundle. Only a bundle which contains several units within it. According to Rashi, at least 3. According to Tosfos, 25. It needs to be bundled together for the sake of long-term storage, as opposed to just for temporary convenience. And as we just learned, it needs to be an eged that can sustain tiltal transporting. Amr Abba Mashmo, Yirake she'amru chachamim, Adam yoytze behen. All those vegetables, those leaves, lettuce, etc., which are allowed to be used for marar on Pesach, so it's considered roi lachila. Mevinas atuma. Suppose they are being used as an oil, as an overhang over tuma. They're considered an oil, and they spread the tuma throughout the entire roofed area. Right? So if the lettuce leaf is hovering over something which is tamei, that tumah spreads throughout the entire area as matami anything else that's there in that oil. But they don't pose a barrier. They don't stop the tumah from spreading upward. Why? The Gemara soon will explain. We don't give it a din of oil. Only the chumrah, but not the kula. Typically an oil would spread the tumah underneath it, but would stop it in its tracks, prevent it from spreading beyond the oil. These thin, flimsy leaves are not really regarded as a true barrier, as a true roof. So the chumrah, yes, they spread the tumah throughout the area, but they don't block the tumah from continuing upward. Upaislan b'sukkah mishum aver. Oh, this pertains to us. So all these vegetables, all these leaves, are considered SUKKAH pasal because it's something which is theoretically makabel tumah. It's food. And SUKKAH pasal is pasal when it has 4 tfachim. Right, you have 4 tfachim of invalid SUKKAH in your sukkah, then it's pasal. At least underneath that SUKKAH, right? But here, says the Gemara, Umu machmer. We only allow less than 3 tfachim. Once it's 3 tfachim, then you have a concern. Why? We treat it like airspace. And once you get to 3 tfachim, you're past the loved. Right? The sheer loved is only up until 3. So when you have airspace, empty space in your SUKKAH, up till 3 is loved. It's always closed off, but 3 and up is past loved. When we speak about these vegetables, we consider them like airspace. In which case we'll machmer that once it's 3 tfachim and up, you have a concern. Why? Why is it airspace? You have leaves. Says the Gemara, those leaves are not really durable. They're not going to last too long. My time, why don't we treat them like everything else? Kivan delechiyavshi, parchi v'nafli. Since when they dry up, parchi, they just brittle, they disintegrate, v'nafli, and they fall apart. Keman the less nudami. We treat them as though they're non-existent. So, with regards to oil, we say l'chumra. While they're here, this overhang presents as an oil. But, not l'kula, meaning the tumah can continue. Break right through the oil. They don't prevent it from spreading further, because they're not a significant oil. It's something which is not going to last. And likewise regarding sukkah. Although they have substance, but that's only currently. They're roi for maror, it's roi lachila. Tesis brings that maror is only something which is roi lachila. Right? So they have substance, they have body, but since they're not something that are going to be long term, not going to last, they're going to dry up and disintegrate, we treat them l'chumra like aver, and unless it's less than 3 tfachim, there's a concern. V'amar Rabbi Abba Amar Rav Huna, haboitzer legas ein lo yadis. If one harvests his grapes together with the with the branches on the grapes hanging on the branches, the clusters of grapes, those branches holding the clusters don't have a din of yad. Yad means a handle, an access point. The halacha is just as the fruit itself is makabel tumah, the yad itself, the handle of that fruit, the inedible portion, the branch next to the fruit, be it the branches of the vine, be it the stalks of your kernels, they're meant to be used as handlers of that fruit. It's a yad. It gives you access to the food, and therefore, if tumah touches even that stalk, which is next to the food becomes tummy. Says Rav Huna that the concept of yadis is only if it's serving a function, if it's helping, if it's assisting, if you're using it to handle the food. But in this case, where he's baitzel a gas, he's harvesting his grapes for the gas, for the wine press. He doesn't want those branches in there. Actually, they ruin it. They absorb wine. So in which case, the yadis are no longer serving a purpose. They're not functioning together with the grapes. They're not considered yadis, and they're no longer makabel tumah. So that's Rabbi Abba, in the name of Rav Huna. Rabbi Menashe Bar Gada Amar Rav Huna, he has even a greater chiddush. Hakoytel SUKKAH ein lo yadis. If one harvests his grain, for instance, in order to use the stalks for SUKKAH, says Rabbi Menashe, since he doesn't really care about the food portion of that stalk, the kernels are makabel tumah, not really right for SUKKAH. In which case we say the stalks are not really serving the kernels. They're not serving a common function. And therefore, the stalks are not considered a davar that's makabel tumah, and the entire stalk, even the portion next to the kernel, which would generally be considered a yad, in this case, since his intent is to use the entire stalk for the sake of SUKKAH, he's not reckoning with the food portion. The stalk is no longer serving the kernel. It's entire inedible. The entire stalk is considered kosher SUKKAH. So you had Rabbi Abba spoke about boitzer lagas, harvesting for the sake of pressing, and we have Rabbi Menashe speaking about koitzer SUKKAH, harvesting for the sake of SUKKAH. Says the Gemara, Manda Amar koitzer, the Shita, Rabbi Menashe, who said that koitzer SUKKAH loses its yad status, kolshkin boitzer, of course, by boitzer, when he's harvesting for the sake of pressing those grapes, certainly the yad is not considered a makabel tumah. He doesn't want those stalks. He doesn't want those branches. Because it's going to absorb his wine. So in that case, certainly the yad has no significance. However, the first shit, Rabbi Abba spoke about harvesting to the wine press. He disagrees with the second sheet. Only by boitzer does it lose its yad status because it's actually getting in his way. He doesn't want to connect it to his grapes. Whereas by koitzel SUKKAH, there it's different. the yad is still considered serving. It's still considered connected, related to the food, in which case the yad is still mekabel tuma. Why? Because he wants the kernel portion to remain intact and connected to the stalks. You know why? So the stalks wouldn't just fly away with the wind. So the kernel is actually weighing it down like a paperweight. Therefore, the yad and the kernel are still one and the same. They're connected to each other, and the yad is still going to be mekabel tuma. So in conclusion, we have two similar examples, but we have machlekes. When he's boitzer lagas, he's harvesting to press that wine. All agree the branches are not really there. They're not really something to be reckoned with, because they're not serving the grapes. They're getting in his way. And therefore, they don't have a din of yad. That's the kuli alma. Regarding keitel eschach, we have machlekes. One shita says that since he doesn't really want the edible portion, which is not kosher for schach, so the yad isn't really serving a purpose. He doesn't need the fruit. So the yad is no longer considered a yad, and the entire inedible portion of his schach is kosher. Whereas the other shita maintained that even when it comes to stalks or branches containing food used for schach, he still wants the fruit there to keep the branches and stalks intact. In which case, the connection, the relationship between stalk and kernel are still there. Still continues. And the stalk is considered a yad to the edible portion. What's enough kamina? That the chelik near the kernel, being that it's a yad and is mekabel tuma, is not kosher for schach. Says more Nema Rav Menashe bar Gada Tanoi. Perhaps this shita of Rav Menashe, he was the second shita. He held that keitel schach no longer has a din of yad, is actually dependent on a machlekes tanaim. The sanya seichetenim, branches of a fig tree, ubehen teinim, with some figs intact, parchilin, vine branches, ubehen anov, with some grapes intact, kashan, stalks, ubehen shibalin, with some kernels there, machbedes, palm branches, ubehen tamarim, with some dates there, kulan, in all these cases, im psoilis merubal oichlin, ksher. There's more inedible than edible, then the edible portion is batal b'roiv, and you can use it for schach. Vim lav psula, but otherwise it's possible. Meaning the inedible portion has to be greater than the actual edible portion. That's it. We don't have to worry about yodes. Any inedible is kosher for schach, even the portion next to the kernel itself. Apparently, the Tanakama holds. Once he harvested it for the sake of schach, he doesn't need the edible portion. He doesn't need the kernel. He doesn't need the fruit. So there's no yad. The entire inedible is kosher for schach. No. There's still something called yad. So the portion next to the edible is considered a handle, an access point to the fruit, to the kernel, in which case that's mekabel tuma, and it's not kosher for schach. The only way it's kosher is if you overwhelm the fruit and his yad. You need more inedible than both together. Only way it's kosher is if they kashan, if the stalks are greater, are more plentiful than both, than the yadais and the oichan. Apparently this is the machlokes. The marasavar yeshlan yadais. Acherim hold, even if he's using it for schach, the fact is he wants that fruit, he wants that kernel there to keep the stalk, to keep it in place. So this type of function, this type of use is still reckoned with, in which case the yad is still there, it's still connected to the fruit, and is still considered an access point and a handle to that fruit. Umar Savar Eilan Yadis. Whereas the Tanakama maintains, since he harvested for the sake of schach, in which case he doesn't really want the fruit. It's not kosher for schach. So he sort of severed that connection, that relationship between fruit and yadis. The stalk is no longer serving that fruit. It's no longer really being connected to it. Because they're not serving a common function and a common purpose. Therefore, there's no such a concept of yadis in this case, and the entire inedible portion is kosher for schach. Apparently, he holds that even though he's He's using it as schach, and he wants the fruit there as to weigh it down, as we said. But that type of use is just residual. That's not an ikar shimush of the fruit, and we don't have to reckon with it. That's not going to give the stalk a din of yad. It's not really serving as food, as a real shimush, and you could just ignore it. It doesn't have chashivas, as though fruit's not here, and certainly the stalk is not serving it. So apparently it's machlokes tanoim. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Abba. Let's go down the line. Rabbi Abba was the first shita who said, Boitzer legas, because the branch is going to absorb your wine. In that case, certainly the yad is not part of the equation. You don't even want him here. Whereas by Kaitzer leschach, since you still want them connected, you want the stalk with the grain because it's going to keep it weighted. Therefore, it has the din of yad. So Rabbi Abba vade tanai. According to him, you certainly have to say it's a machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Abba, who holds that even kaitzel eschach still has yad, is following shitas acherim, who hold that not only is the edible portion itself pasal v'schach, but even the yad itself is pasal v'schach. Whereas Tanakama maintains it loses its yad status. So apparently it is a machlokes tanoim. However, Rav Menashe bar Gada, according to the second shita, Rav Menashe said that even kaitzel eschach doesn't have a din of yad. Milei metanai, do you really have to say that's machlokes tanoim? Or perhaps you can get around it. Amalach Rav Menashe. Rav Menashe will respond, no. All agree that in my case there's no din of yad. Dekuli alma savriya kaitzel eschach ein layadis. If you really would have harvested these stalks for schach use, of course there's no din yad, because you don't use kernels for schach. The stalk is not serving the kernel in this capacity. That's pashut. So what then is the machlokes tanoim in the rice that we just mentioned? You know what we're speaking about here? A unique case. He picked it for consumption, to eat it. In which case, the edible portion has chashivas. That's the prime ingredient here, right? The yad is serving the fruit, is serving the kernel. That was initially v'nimlach alein l'sichach. Then he changed his mind. He redesignated it for sichach, for schach. In which case we say, yeah, since initially it was done for achila purposes, and it attained a yad status at that point, acher maintain that it no longer can lose that yad status. Once it acquires it, it doesn't get revoked. Says, well, if that's the case, then how do you understand the Tanakama, who holds that there's no yad? If the tzitza, if the harvesting was for achila purposes, then why would the Rabbanan say there's no yad here? The stalk is serving the kernel, the branch, the fruit. Perhaps the Rabbanan will maintain that kivan the nimlach alein l'sichach, once he changed his mind and redesignated these materials for sichach, in which case he doesn't need the food portion. But le machshavta, the initial intent, the initial kavana, gets cancelled. So since the material gets redesignated for schach, in which case the food no longer plays a role, the yad concept gets revoked. Says the Gemara, Umi batla le machshava b'hachi? Can you go ahead and cancel an initial machshava, an initial designation, simply by redesignation? You can't do that. The current machshava doesn't have the ability to undo, to revoke the previous machshava. Vatnan, kol hakelim. You're dealing with a tumah machshava. A kli can attain a tumah capacity, become susceptible to tumah, simply through machshava, through designation. He decided, okay, I'm done with this kli. I'm not going to carve it any further. This is roy for my use. Then it becomes roy l'kabel tumah. It's called gemar malacha. So mental designation is enough. However, once it acquires that capability, it no longer loses it, unless you do a masa to undo it. It can't leave the tumah capability, unless you do another masa to undo it. For instance, you have a sheet of hide, And you fixed it up and you decide, you know what, I'm going to use it as a tablecloth or as a mat. It's considered Gemar Malacha, it's Mekabel Tumah. Then he changes his mind. I'm going to use it for straps. Unless he actually does a masa to indicate as such. For instance, he puts the knife through it and begins slicing it into strips. Merely by designation, by redefining its purpose, that won't change its status. Only through a shini masa. A masa is powerful and can undo the previous designation. And as the Mishnah concludes, masa moitzi miyad masa. The current masa can undo a previous masa. Umiyad machshava, or from a previous machshava. However, machshava, just a simple thought, a simple machshava, a redesignation, cannot undo a previous masa or even a previous machshava. So how can we say that simply redesignating the food material for SUKKAH use will change its status and will revoke its yadois status? You can't say that. Machshava can't do that. The Chitema says, perhaps he'll say it's a difference. The actual utensil itself, which is chashiv, which is inherently valuable, that can't be changed simply by machshava. So once it becomes mekabel tumah, you can't revoke that status simply by redesignation. But when it comes to handles, yades, which aren't really chashiv on their own, their value is not inherent. It's only on account of the fact that they're helping. They're supplemental factors. They're helping the eichel. They're allowing you access. They're allowing you convenient handling of the food. So since it's not an inherent value, machshava salka, perhaps it's easier to bring about and to remove its tumah designation. And therefore by us, although initially he cut this stalk for the sake of achila, in which case it had a yad, but now he changed his mind, and that revoked its yad status, and that's a pshat in the Tanna Kama. Is that so? That's none. We learned in a Mishnah, Kol yodas ha'ichan, all the yadis of foods, shebasasan begurn. He did some sort of basasan process, which we're going to see exactly what this means soon. At that point, it loses its yad status. It's no longer mekabel tumah. Rabbi Yehuda maintains that it retains its yad status even after basasan. Now, what does basasan mean? We have two pshatim. Basasan, according to the Shita, who says that basasan means hitir agudan. He has bundles of grain, of stalks, and he untied the bundle. In which case, he demonstrated that he no longer needs those stalks. Right? It's in his threshing floor, it's in the gurren. He's no longer going to transport these kernels by way of their stalks. Stalks are no longer functioning. So simply demonstrating intent. Right? It's not really a mass, it's not really a change. It's not really doing a shinoi in the stalks. It's just untying them. That is sufficient to revoke their yad status because they're no longer serving the kernels. No longer needs those stalks. The Tanna Kama says, those yodais ha'ichem shebasasan, right? They untied. Rashi says, misbeseses b'mayich, just let it just get messed up, right? That's enough to revoke its yad status. So that's simply a machshava, it's an intent, it's a show of intent. So we see that redesignation is enough to revoke the yad status. Okay, so according to that Shita Shapa, we understand the Tanna Kama of our brisa as well. Although initially he was koitzitz that food la'achila, in which case it had yadais, but now they redesignated it for SUKKAH use. That itself cancels the yad status. Elul madamar mein basasan mamish. According to the other pshat, who maintains that the word basasan means mamish, crushed them, softened them. In which case he began loosening, like separating the stalk from the grain, from the kernel part. In which case it's a real mice, and only that can go ahead and revoke the yad status, because from this point onward the yad isn't really serving much; it's on its way out. And only then does the Mishnah maintain that it loses its yad status. Michael Meimar. What are you going to say now? Why in our case where he picked the schach la'achila and then decided to use it for schach without a ma'isa, Taisa says, just placing it on the sukkah itself, apparently is not considered a shini ma'asa, not really changing the actual material. So why do you say that it loses its yad status? How do you explain the Tanakam? Apparently here as well, he actually crushed it a bit. In which case he demonstrated his lack of interest in that food-yad connection. So the yad is no longer serving the food. In which case Tanakam maintains that it's tar. Says the Gemara, now that you explained the Tanakama so well, what's the pshat nachir? That even after crushing them and showing his lack of interest in that food because he needs it for schach, and all he needs is an edible portion, why do they maintain that the inedible portion is still serving the food? There's still a yad. Says the Gemara, apparently acherim hold like Rabbi Yossi. The Rabbi Yossi that we just mentioned in this most recent Mishnah, there's not Rabbi Yossi Matami. Even after a physical act, it's still considered a yad. So how could you compare the two things? How do you compare this? We understand over there in the case of the granary, time of the Rabbi Yossi, why does Rabbi Yossi hold that it's still considered a yad even after crushing? Chazia, look at the Shimon Malakish, because it's still somewhat suitable. The stalks are still serving a purpose. The Amar Shimon Malakish, these stalks are still serving a purpose. Atar is a pitchfork. When he has to go and turn over his grain inside his granary on that threshing floor, it's easier to do it when the kernels are still attached to their stalks. So it makes for easy and convenient transporting. So although stalks and kernels are sort of starting to separate, but while they're still connected, they're serving a purpose. So Rashi maintains, despite the fact that they did a mass of crushing, they're still considered yadis and still retain their yad status. As opposed to the case of schach. Why would you need these stalks connected to the kernels? What service, what function are the yadis doing? Says the Gemara, chazia is still serving a function. L'chisasa, because after Sukkot, when he takes apart his schach, l'minkat lehu b'gilayu, he'll be able to grab hold of the kernels by way of their stalks. Instead of having to pick out kernels from all over the place, he has these stalks still connected to the kernels. Well, he doesn't really need the kernels for schach, the apostle of schach, but he's pleased with the fact that the kernel is still connected to the stalks, which allows for easy access. Okay, so in conclusion, we had a brisa with two shittas regarding the status of a yad by schach. Do we say that just as the fruit is not ready for schach, so too the yad portion as well? Or do we say that when it comes to schach, the food portion isn't really a player in the equation because it's possible schach? So the yad isn't really serving that fruit. It's not really considered serving the same function as a fruit, and it doesn't have tumah. We have 3 ways to explain the brisa. A simple way was, machlokes is whether koitzer l'schach has yadis. Then we had another 2 pshatim that was speaking in a case where he was koitzer l'achila, changes his mind, wants it for sichuch. 2 ways. 2 ways that could have happened, either through redesignation, through machshava. The question is whether machshava is enough to change the status when it comes to yadis, which aren't really inherently valuable. And the second pshat was speaking that he did a masa to indicate his disinterest in the food stalk connection. And the machlokes is whether we say that it loses its yad status, or do we say still he still has some hanaf from the fact that the stalk is still connected to the kernel, which allows him to clean it up easily, in which case it still retains its yad status. Okay, so let's just summarize this Amud of Gemara. We spoke about the halach of yadais, in which case we say not only does the food portion itself have kabbalas tumah, the portion next to the food, which is used to handle the food, to transport the food, is also considered a makabel tumah. That's typically. What about in the case of Boitzel Lagas? He harvested his grapes in order to bring them to the wine press. All agree. The branch is just getting in his way, and they no longer have any value. He doesn't want them connected to his grapes, and they're not makabel tumah. Whereas by Koitzel L'Schach, we have a discussion. Rav Menashe maintains there as well. There's no kabbalas tumah by the yad because the food portion isn't really part of the equation. It's actually puzzle for schach. So we don't see it as a yad serving that food portion. They're not serving a common goal. The food portion is not really reckoned with here, and therefore the yad is no longer a yad, is not makabel tumah, and it's kosher for schach. Rabbi Abba held Koitzel Schach is different than Boitzel Lagas. In this case, he still wants the food portion there to keep his stalks in place, to weigh him down. And Rabbi Abba maintains, I follow like Shitas Achirim. Shitas Achirim in the Brisa who maintain that Koitzel Schach still has Yodis. So we had a Brisa with a Shita of a Tanakama who maintained that Schach has no Yodis. Achirim maintain there are Yodis by Schach as well. Rabbi Menashe learned very simply. He was Koitzel L'Schach. According to Tanakama, there's no Yodis because there's really the food portion and there's no Yodis in that case. According to Achirim, he still wants the food portion there as well to keep the stalks down, in which case the Yodis are still connected to the food, still considered a handle of that fruit. Rabbi Abba learned differently. He says if it's Koitzel L'Schach, of course there's no Yodis. We're speaking that it was Koitzel L'Achid and then he changed his mind, decided to use it for Schach. Oh. Now there are two ways to interpret this price. Either it was merely a redesignation, but machshava. Tanakama maintains this latest machshava is mevatel, the tumah capacity, which descended upon those yodis earlier. This is unique to yodis, although by clay you can't just redesignate machshava, but a yad which isn't really chashav on its own. So redesignating it, redefining its purpose and goal, affects its status. Whereas Acher maintain no. Once the yad acquired kabbalas tumah, it no longer loses that status even if it redefines and redesignates its function and purpose. So according to them, yad is no different than kli in this respect. An alternate pshat in this price would be that he redesignated it through masa, by thrashing, by crushing, which actually changed the form of the material as well. In which case, Tanakama maintains it's no longer a yad because it's not serving the eichel. He wants it separated, and he demonstrated as such by crushing it. Whereas Acher maintain it still has a din of yad because the yad is still serving a purpose. When he takes apart his sukkah, he's going to be able to grab onto the eichel portion through the yodais, in which case we say the yad is still there and still serving a purpose and a function, and is makabel tumah. Okay, let's just recap the main points of today's sugya. We're not meant to use bundles for schach, as Xeris Oitzer might lead to using bundles which were placed for drying and storage. However, a bundle is only something which was bundled together b'dei adam. If it contains several units within it, either 3 or 25, it's bundled for the sake of safekeeping, and it's something that can be transported in its bundled form. Those thin, flimsy vegetables, which are kosher for maror, are not considered a proper oil because they're going to dry up and disintegrate, and they're considered like avir, which is pasul once it has 3 tfachim in a sukkah. We learned that boitzer lagas has no yadois, koitzel l'schach, we have a machlekes. Kol tov to you, and hatzlacha rab.